Olympia. Feminist criminology is a paradigm. It studies and explains criminal offending and victimisation, as well as institutional responses to these problems, as fundamentally gendered. It emphasises the importance of using the scientific knowledge we acquire from these studies of these issues, to influence the creation and implementation of public policy that will alleviate oppression and contribute to more equitable social relations and social structures. The feminist theory contends that for too long, criminology academics have remained male-dominant and generalised, to the detriment of oppressed and marginalised women who had to experience the justice system. The main goal of the feminist model, therefore, seems to be providing a voice to women in a system that has underrepresented and dismissed or ignored their experience for too long. Since the early 60s, feminist academics have challenged the founded criminological concepts as they are ideals rooted in a patriarchal and biased system. According to Daly, in Western thought, depictions of men and women's natures have been made almost exclusively by men. Criminology was dominated by a specific measure of thinking from a specific group of people and had to be challenged in order to better tackle crime in the 20th century. The main arm of feminist criminology emerged as a challenge to structures of thought that ignored, stereotyped, or inadequately addressed women and crime. Only a few decades passed, and feminist criminologists such as Behrens and Gordon sought to analyse female criminals and victims of crime in a greater framework of social and cultural structures arranged to oppress women. This kind of work was seen as a radical shift of thinking in the field, but on the authority of Chesney Lind, it was an essential shift that allowed for a greater concern for women's rights and access to justice in the Western world. In the United States, in 1994, they enacted the Violence Against Women Act, which, as part of that act, it allowed victims to sue their attackers if they were not charged or unsuccessful in criminal court. This led to the case of the United States versus Morrison in 1999, where the Supreme Court struck out that clause as unconstitutional. An interesting facet of the case was that the evidence brought out in favour of the United States keeping that clause was mainly statistics on the abuse women had suffered, such as 3 out of 4 women will be victims of violent crime in their lifetime, and that the leading cause of injury for women between 15 to 44 was violence. That was true at the time. I'm not sure how true it is at present. A similar issue arose in Britain around the same time, when a study of women's prisons by a newly appointed chief inspector of prisons led to an overhaul of penological thinking and policy governing female incarceration and sentencing. So that was the HMN Prison Forward overhaul. Essentially, there were no resources for women's needs, no thought given to women institutionalised and how they should be treated. They were treated just the same as men, and it led to gross misconduct in a lot of circumstances. In Australia, we had the introduction of Section 4AB of the Family Law Act, which expanded the definition of family violence to include financial, physical, psychological, emotional trauma, all these things that the courts had previously dismissed as not contributing. The issue with feminist criminology tends to be rooted around this idea of lack of core beliefs. Feminist criminology is usually split into different subgroups, feminist Marxists, feminist radicals, and because these groups will clash on certain ideals, different academics take the viewpoint that feminism has no central concept which they can all draw on. The other sort of issue raised against feminist criminology is that it lacks It lacks quantitative research. It relies way too heavily on qualitative data, and it criticises patriarchal thinking, but then adopts that patriarchal thinking into its own core belief system. The feminist view of criminology, like all other forms of academia, has been challenged and questioned since its foundation. There have been issues raised about its objectivity and its goals, its supposed lack of uniformity and evidence-based value to society, However, when these critics are measured against their strides in the public policy across the Western world in areas like women's access to justice and victim assistance programs, it is hard to accept that feminist criminology has not helped provide a much needed voice for marginalised groups. Thank you.